These are some of the most brutal fouls in World Cup history. And starting with the fastest red card in World Cup history, this is Jose Batista. And in Mexico '86, he found his country Uruguay in arguably the group of death. But Jose took this word death a bit too literally. Uruguay were in a group with Denmark, West Germany, and Scotland, who were managed by none other than the legendary Sir Alex Ferguson. And in their final match, Uruguay needed to avoid defeat to Scotland for a chance of making the next round. But Batista decided to take it to a different level by smashing into Scotland's Gordon Strachan while fans were still settling into their seats. So, within less than a minute of the match, Batista saw red in what was the fastest red card of a World Cup game. But Scotland couldn't find a way to score despite playing basically the whole game with a man extra, so somehow Uruguay made it through despite what had just happened. Batista finished his international career with 14 caps for Uruguay, but I'm not sure this one should have counted. But if you thought that was crazy, what happened in Italia '90 was even more brutal. Italia '90 won football fans' hearts in England and was seen as a turning point that kickstarted the modern game. But the football itself was certainly far from beautiful, with lots of dull, negative football with some brutal tackles flying in all over the place. But two tackles that changed England's relationship with the game were performed by midfield maestro Paul Gascoigne. Gazza was the creative genius behind England's run to the semi-finals, but the line between genius and madness is wafer thin, and Gascoigne often strayed on the wrong side of that line, famously ruining his career by injuring himself doing brutal fouls in the 1991 FA Cup final. But the summer before that, his self-destruction was on display for the whole world to see. First off, in England's round of 16 match against Belgium, Gazza was frustrated by England's inability to score, so decided a two-footed launch into the back of Belgium's Enzo Schifo, and that foul would have been a red card by today's standards, but Gazza only got a yellow. But that meant one more yellow and he'd miss the next game. Then, in the semi-final against West Germany, Gazza again showed too much enthusiasm to foul Thomas Berthold and get a yellow card that would mean that if England won, he would miss the World Cup final. And so Gazza was in tears, crying that he had let himself and his country down. So Gary Lineker had to tell the England coaches to keep a close eye on him and make sure he didn't get himself sent off. And because he was so emotional, he didn't take a penalty in the shootout that England eventually lost. And as we said, Italia '90 was a quite dirty tournament, and one game that really showed that was West Germany's round of 16 match against the Netherlands. These guys really couldn't get along, with bad tackles galore, but two players especially couldn't get along. Germany's Rudi Völler and the Netherlands' Frank Rijkaard seemed more intent on winding each other up than actually playing football, and within the space of a few minutes, both players needlessly got themselves sent off. It started with Rijkaard's crude tackle on Völler, which earned the Dutchman a yellow card. So far, fair enough. But when jogging back into position to defend the resulting free kick, Rijkaard spat in Völler's hair. Seriously, these are some disgusting playground moves, unnoticed by the referee but seen in slow-mo by millions on TV. And Völler was obviously incensed, and so told Rijkaard what he thought of this before giving the referee an earful too. And so he was also booked, which seems pretty harsh given what had just happened. And when the free kick was headed to the Dutch goalie, Völler pointlessly jumped at him and rolled over, causing another confrontation with Rijkaard, who then stamped on his foot, and somehow, after all of that, the referee gave Völler a second yellow card. So despite basically doing nothing, he got sent off. And then, when moments later Rijkaard also got a second yellow and received his marching orders, he spat in Völler's hair again. That'll teach him for having an 80s style perm. But when it comes to World Cup brutal fouls, we're still very much in the group stage of the tournament, as the worst are yet to come, including the two most violent games in World Cup history. And to see more videos like this, hit subscribe. But back at the 2002 World Cup, South Korea had several questionable refereeing decisions that went their way, but they also were on the end of some painful fouls, like in the round of 16, when Italy's Christian Vieri broke Kim Tae-young's nose. And people forget that on their run to the semi-finals, Korea actually finished top of their group after drawing with the USA and beating Poland and Portugal. And the soon-to-be Manchester United legend Park Ji-sung got the winning goal against Portugal, but he could have ended up injured after this horrific tackle. In the 27th minute of a rather scrappy match, Portugal's João Pinto decided it was a good idea to launch himself through the air into the back of Park Ji-sung's knee. And this was as clear-cut as a red card can be, but somehow Pinto thought his foul was acceptable. Nope, rather, it was an early bath for Pinto and an early exit for Portugal. And Christian Vieri isn't the first Italian to break an opponent's nose at the World Cup, as in 1994, there was an elbow so bad that it led to a historic ban. The quarterfinal between Spain and Italy might be remembered for Roberto Baggio's late winner, but Italy really should have finished the game with 10 players after a horrendous elbow by Mauro Tassotti, who struck Spain's Luis Enrique square in the face, breaking his nose. But luckily for Tassotti, the referee was looking the other way at the time and didn't spot his attempt at an on-pitch rhinoplasty. I mean, the blood running down Enrique's face should have given him a hint, and although Tassotti says he tried to apologize, Enrique demanded action. But Italy's manager Arrigo Sacchi blamed Enrique, saying he got elbowed because he pulled Tassotti's shirt. But while Tassotti avoided any punishment during the game, FIFA's long arm of the law came after him later and handed him a record 8-game ban based on video evidence, and that ban ended his international career as he never played for Italy again, much to the relief of opposition noses everywhere. Back in 1970, footballers were used to hard tackles, and England were as tough as they come. They even had a player called Norman Bites Your Legs Hunter, so if you played against the Three Lions, you would probably know about it afterward. But without video analysis, nobody quite knew what the opponents would be like, and when England played Romania in their opening game, they were in for a shock, as Romania's left back Mihai Mocanu played football as if his boots contained homing missiles targeted at England players' legs. His first target was England's right back Terry Newton, who he injured so badly that Newton needed benching. Next up was his replacement Tommy Wright, and then he tackled Franny Lee with a high two-footed tackle so bad that Lee said he had identical stud marks in each knee. Now, that's a painful way to start the World Cup. And when it comes to rough World Cup matches, wait till you see the 1962 tournament. In those days, red and yellow cards didn't exist as we know them today. Instead, the referee would just tell players to leave the field. And this happened twice in this next match, but that was just the start of the on-pitch violence. You know a game is bad when it's called a battle? And this game was so violent, it was dubbed the Battle of Santiago. Chile were World Cup hosts, and some Italian journalists didn't seem to think much of the host nation, describing Santiago as a backwater dump and questioning the morality of Chilean women. And so when Chile played Italy in a group stage match, players were angry even before the start of the match, and it only took a few seconds of the match before the first foul. Then, after just 8 minutes, Italy's Giorgio Ferrini was sent off but refused to leave the pitch, and policemen had to come onto the pitch to remove him. And that caused some of the other players to lose their heads and have a full-on punch-up, where a punch by Chile's Lionel Sanchez left an Italian player with a broken nose. And as the referee missed most of the punches thrown, the players themselves spent the rest of the game trying to get revenge on each other with off-the-ball slaps and kicks, and after the linesman didn't spot Sanchez slapping Italy's Mario David, he took vigilante action and tried to kick Sanchez in the head, leading to the second sending off of the match, and the violence continued, causing the police to enter the pitch to intervene 3 more times. And the referee later said, "I wasn't reffing a football match, I was acting as an umpire in military maneuvers." And while Chile won 2-0, the BBC called the match the most stupid, appalling, disgusting, and disgraceful exhibition of football possibly in the history of the game. As for the referee, he went on to invent yellow and red cards, and we'll be seeing plenty of those in the games coming up, but this next offender perhaps needs a menu card instead. Footballers at the World Cup don't often dive into the local cuisine, but at the Brazil 2014 World Cup, Luis Suarez decided he would prefer an Italian. You know where this is going. Suarez had already been banned twice for biting players in his career, getting a 7-game ban while at Ajax and a 10-game ban for biting Chelsea's Branislav Ivanovic while playing for Liverpool. But he went into Uruguay's match as a hero after scoring twice to eliminate England in the game before, and earlier in this match, Italy had a player sent off for a high tackle, leading Italy's coach to claim the referee was biased. So he must have lost his mind when in the 79th minute, Suarez took a bite out of Giorgio Chiellini and then fell over and held his face, pretending that he has hurt his teeth. Luckily for Suarez, the referee missed his chomp and ignored Chiellini even when he showed the bite marks on his shoulder. And Italy's players were too busy protesting the decision, so they conceded a corner from which Uruguay scored the winning goal. But afterward, FIFA did recognize the bite, and Luis Suarez was a serial offender, so they banned him for 9 games. And when it comes to brutal fouls, we're well into the knockout rounds in the World Cup now, as some of these next fouls are basically assaults, full-on GBH, and this next one was so bad that people in France voted this next guy as worse than Hitler. France were playing West Germany in the 1982 World Cup semi-final, and French player Patrick Battiston was through on goal. But when German goalkeeper Harald Schumacher smashed into him at full speed, not even looking at the ball, and he hit Battiston so hard that it put him into a coma. He needed oxygen and damaged his back, lost several teeth, and cracked 3 ribs. France's captain Michel Platini even said he thought Battiston was dead. The referee thought otherwise and actually let play continue for a while before allowing medics to treat him. But Schumacher didn't care at all and even did keepy-uppies while waiting for Battiston to be stretchered off. And when asked about the foul after the game, he joked that he'd pay for Battiston's dentures. But French players are no saints either, and this next player gave the world one of the most iconic World Cup final moments of all time, but not in a good way. When somebody scores a worldie, you might say, stick it in the Louvre. But this next incident was made into a bronze statue for Paris's Pompidou Center Museum. Zinedine Zidane is one of France's all-time greats, but will be remembered for his final act as a professional footballer. In the 2006 World Cup final between France and Italy, few remember that Zidane scored the opening goal and that Marco Materazzi scored Italy's equalizer. That's because after the game finished 1-1 and went to extra time, Materazzi was marking Zidane a little too closely, grabbing onto his shirt to stop him from getting on the end of any crosses. So Zidane told him, "If you want my shirt, I'll give it to you after the game." But Materazzi replied, "I'd rather have your sister." And Zidane lost it completely and headbutted Materazzi, who fell to the ground. Straight red card for Zidane in what would be his final match. And without him, France lost the final on penalties. This next match also saw a football legend. This time, Portugal's Luis Figo gets sent off for a headbutt, but that's only a fraction of what happened at a game dubbed the Battle of Nuremberg. The 2006 World Cup knockout match between Portugal and the Netherlands broke records for the most cards shown in an international tournament game, with referee Valentin Ivanov handing out a record 16 yellow cards and 4 red cards. Mark van Bommel was first up, getting booked after just 2 minutes, and soon after, Khalid Boularus got a yellow for a foul on Cristiano Ronaldo that forced the Portuguese star off injured, with Ronaldo later saying the foul was a deliberate attempt to injure him. Portugal then scored to take the lead, but by halftime, they would be down to 10 men as Castilla picked up 2 yellow cards. But it was the second half which would go down in history, starting with Giovanni van Bronckhorst fouling Luis Figo, who replied by headbutting him and only got a yellow card. And Figo was soon hacked down again by Boularus, who got a second yellow card, and that tackle also caused a scrap on the touchline. And not long after, there was another brawl, this time after the Netherlands didn't give the ball back after Portugal kicked it out so that an injured player could get treatment. And by this time, the yellow cards were really piling up. They weren't just for fighting, but for time wasting or talking back to the referee. And it wasn't long before another player got a second yellow card. This time, it was Portugal's Deco for preventing a quick free kick, and then, right at the end of the game, Van Bronckhorst got his second yellow, leaving each team with 9 players each. But it wasn't as if there was too much bad blood between the players, as the red-carded Van Bronckhorst, Deco, and Boularus all sat together to chat and watch the rest of the game in what was dubbed the Bad Boys Corner. And now we are well and truly into the semi-finals of World Cup bad tackles, and this next tackle was so bonkers, the offending player lost his own shoe. Now, at the World Cup, there's always one team that surprises everyone. That goes far further than anyone thought possible, whether it's Morocco in 2022, or South Korea in 2002. But at Italia 90, it was Cameroon, who, inspired by star player Roger Milla, who came out of retirement for the tournament, went further in the competition than any African team before them. And they did that by fouling players a lot. Cameroon started that good run off with a surprise 1-0 win against Argentina, but after spending 90 minutes kicking lumps out of Diego Maradona, they finished that game with just 9 men. First, Andre Canabique was sent off after 61 minutes, and then right near the end, Benjamin Massing did everything in his power to stop an Argentina attack. Argentina's Claudia Caniggia got past one man to start a counterattack, and then Cameroon's Victor Ndip tried to take him out with a tactical foul. But when Caniggia didn't go down, Massing took things in his own hands and lunged at the already off-balance Argentinian, utterly wiping him out and losing his own boot in the process in a tackle described as an attempt to separate Caniggia's legs from the rest of his body. And so the referee had no choice but to give him a yellow card? Yep, not even a red for this cynical, brutal foul. But Massing already had one yellow card, so that meant he was sent off. And Cameroon finished the game with 9 men, but won the match, and their fairy tale story of thuggery took them all the way to extra time in the quarterfinals. And the next World Cup, USA 94, saw an even more shocking foul. The USA reached the knockout stages, where the hosts faced Brazil, but this match was certainly not the beautiful game, and as it was played on US Independence Day, there's no surprise that there were fireworks as Brazil's Leonardo elbowed the USA's Tab Ramos in the face so hard that it fractured Ramos's skull and left him unconscious and with some bleeding on the brain. And Ramos was in hospital for the next 3.5 months, so unsurprisingly, Leonardo was sent off and FIFA banned him for 4 matches, which at the time was their second longest suspension, and which meant he missed the rest of the World Cup and had to watch Brazil's win in the final from the stands, which is still preferable to a hospital bed. But the worst tackle of the World Cup, perhaps unsurprisingly, came in Spain's World Cup final win against the Netherlands in 2010, and this was Spain at the peak of tiki-taka, so it was impossible to beat them by playing nice, which is perhaps why the Dutch decided to kick them off the park. Referee Howard Webb handed out 14 yellow cards in the game and sent off the Netherlands' John Heitinga in what he called an extremely challenging match to handle. But the moment the match is best remembered for is not Andreas Iniesta's late goal to win the match for Spain, but Nigel de Jong's kung fu kick on Xabi Alonso. De Jong got his legs so high that his studs went right into the middle of Alonso's chest, even though Alonso was in the air at that time, and there was absolutely no way De Jong was ever going to win the ball. And this Street Fighter-style attack was a clear red for anyone who saw it, but Webb didn't see it properly and only deemed this foul worthy of a yellow card. But what do you think? Do you agree, or should De Jong have seen red? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more World Cup content like this, please subscribe and I'll make so much more.